What's up, guys? It's Matt here from Purebred Mutts. Welcome to the Mutts Cast. Today I have a really cool episode for you. I'm excited to talk about it, mainly because it's been on my mind a whole bunch the past probably about year or so, just trying to understand exactly how I want my growth strategy to go on moving forward. As you guys know, I've been talking about a bunch about marketing music in this kind of modern age, and especially as things have evolved in the digital world, what that really looks like. And so I've been putting a lot of thought into this simple idea about, which platforms are the best for musicians and specifically for my music. What platforms do I need to be a part of, and what things do I actually need to put effort into, so that way I can, I guess, in crude terms, get the best return out of, but mainly so that way I can use my time as efficiently as possible, because the main goal obviously is to continue to make music, and then these platforms are just a way to push that music to people who would actually care about it. So I've been doing a lot of mulling, and I've been thinking exactly about which platforms are the best, and I decided a few months back which ones I really wanted to dive into. And for me personally, I'll just get it out of the way, the ones I really like. Instagram, YouTube are my favorite ones. Facebook is a big central hub for me. And then this podcast, so on Spotify, on Apple stuff, I'm not exactly sure all the places I'm putting it. For sure Spotify. And then this also goes on YouTube as well. And those are it. And a lot of people have asked me, and I've been seeing a lot of people talk about TikTok and Clubhouse and all these other things. And it's just like, there's one that pops up all the time, and there's always something new. It was Snapchat when it first came out. That was massive. Before then it was Facebook. Before then it was Snapchat. So, whatever. Or sorry, MySpace. I apologize. That was like the first one way back in the day, 2004. And, as a new wave kind of hits, every time there's like a new platform and something else that you can, basically meet new people in, the new people that are like flooding into that channel, there's always a specific period of time that seems to be the most plentiful for people who are really engaged on that platform. And in the same way that California saw a huge influx of people during the gold rush, it's the same exact thing with these platforms. Now, that being said, whenever a platform first starts out, there's not a whole lot of users, right? So there's not a whole lot of people making content for that platform. And as soon as it starts taking off and people start coming to actually check it out, it starts becoming massive. And the people who are on there get the best reward, because they already have the content that's on there and that people can check out. And those people tend to get propped up higher. And from there, people can kind of dictate how they want to, run their social media strategy. But in the place that we're at now, TikTok, out of all of the social media platforms, and I don't, to be honest with you, I don't really know how Clubhouse works a whole lot. I'm not very interested in it based off of the little interest or research that I've done in it. But right now, TikTok is the plug and play easiest way to get people's attention and get like eyes on you. And I guess your stuff, whatever that is, whether that's music, art, just you as a person, maybe you're a comedian, I don't know. That's the best place to do it. And the reason being is because it's new and there's a whole lot of eyes there. So statistically, all these people who are engaging, frequently being part of it, it's the big play right now. Everyone is there, right? So it just goes to reason that you should have a TikTok, right? I disagree. I don't think that you need to have a TikTok right now. There's reasons you should, there's plenty of those. And we'll talk about that later, but I wanted to make this podcast specifically to talk about why I personally don't fuck with TikTok, why it's not something that I want to mess with, and why I've tried before and realized exactly what it does and how it doesn't really benefit me. So I made a list of all the reasons and things that I wanted to go over to really clarify my point, because I do think it goes to stand that you can do a lot of good for your music career, for your art career, your brand in general on TikTok. There's a lot of good things, and we'll go over that as well. But there's also a lot of bad things that I think are as equally important to go over right now. Let's get into it. The first thing that you'll notice when a new platform comes out is that the people who are already part of that platform have the lowest effort to the biggest results. And what that means is they are already accustomed to this platform and how it works, and other people, as they flood onto it, they get more and more used to the community at large and how the platform works itself and how you're supposed to interact. So the people who've already been there already have that leg up. They're basically the gatekeepers, so to speak. Anyone can use that app, but for these platforms, if you've already been a part of it, especially when it was younger, and now it's blowing up in the same way that like chess blew up after Queen's Gambit, all the people that were streaming that stuff got like huge influxes of people because now there's a whole bunch more eyes going into it. And not all of the eyes need to look at you, but because there's such a big number, you're bound to get more people checking out your stuff. So for you doing little work, all the stuff you were doing already, you are now getting propped up and getting more, views and more people watching your stuff. And that's great. That's awesome. But you don't know what platforms are going to do that. And at this point, TikTok has already moved past that point. I would say over a year and a half ago is when it really hit that apex of you really kicking up being able to use that old content you had already made to like prop yourself up. So what happens after that is new content needs to come on there, and it needs to be consistent, and it needs to be engaging enough for people to click on it and stay on the platform. This is where we're going to talk about algorithms. Every single platform has one, and their main goal, every single platform, their main goal, and they will do whatever it takes to get this to happen, their main goal is to get you to be on the platform for as long as possible. Because the longer that you are on their platform, the more money they can potentially make with maybe ad revenue later on or however. And, that's obviously very valuable to those platforms. So they're going to do whatever they can to get the most engaging content, the content that gets people to stay on longer and longer. They're going to prop that up. If you happen to have that content, you're going to be the fucking king of this platform, and you're going to wreck it. You're going to rule it, That's not me, Personally, that's not the content that I make. It's not meant for those kinds of people, right? It's not meant for I guess in my opinion, that like mass audience. And to be honest with you, even though they are like short, they're Vine segments, right? They're just real short and they get people engaged quickly. But that type of content isn't something that suits me personally. I don't have a good reputation of like starting off strong. I'm more of one of those people who kind of like, lures you in and then gives you the big payoff, right? But as a person on TikTok, it doesn't suit my personal style of how I like to tell stories. And there are people on TikTok who do awesome stuff, and they're really good, and they make just engaging content, and they're good at what they do. And because of that, because they make such engaging content, people are much more willing to stay on and actually listen to, what or at least stay on the platform is what I'm trying to get to. So if you have that content and it's something that works for that specific platform, then you should continue to do that. Definitely. Absolutely. You should do that. And if it doesn't fit you, that's something that you should consider. Maybe instead of, manipulating your content to work for these platforms, you should find a platform that works for the content, that you make. Anyway, I want to dive into that more deeply later, because I think that is ultimately the biggest takeaway from this, but I kind of want to get to these other parts first. So let's kind of move on. And like I said, especially when a new platform is starting out and a whole bunch of eyes are getting to it, like TikTok happened, like Clubhouse is happening right now, there's a lot of eyes and there's not as many people making the content. And that's a very important distinction, because if you have a whole bunch of people wanting to view content and not as many people making content, there's way more eyes versus the content, which means a single piece of content gets more and more eyes put to it. It's basically the same thing as like a housing market. Is it a buyer's market or a seller's market? If it is a seller's market, for instance, which I would imagine is like the early stages of these platforms, right? Everyone is looking to buy something. So the person who has something to sell has a much better chance of making a bigger return on that. So if you have a house and it's worth like, I don't know, okay, let's say figuratively, it's worth like $100,000. I don't know where this house is, just a made up number. But if you have a house worth $100,000 and you want to sell it, and it is a seller's market, there are going to be a whole bunch of people who want to buy that house, right? And so what will happen is that price will constantly get inflated, and there will be more and more people who want to buy that house, so they're willing to pay more. All of a sudden, that house is selling for $150,000, $200,000, $250,000, which is not unheard of. That shit happens all the fucking time. It's insane. It's fucking stupid. Whenever me and my girlfriend bought this house, it was kind of like that. We somewhat lucked out, but that's generally what happens. If you have something in demand, you have the ability to sell it for more than what it was initially valued at. On the flip side, if you have a whole bunch of people trying to sell their house and not as many people trying to buy houses, then you're going to have more competition, as it goes to selling, which means that the only way for you to ensure that you can sell your stuff and just get anything at all is by dropping your price to a point where the buyer says this is reasonable. So it could be worth $100,000, but so is everyone else's house, right? So who's going to sell the house? Someone who sells it for $80,000, right? Because at least they got $80,000. You're stuck with something that's worth $100,000 that no one is going to buy, right? So that's kind of the distinction when it comes to house. How does that translate over to TikTok or any other platform, right? Whenever you first start like a platform and it gets it first starts out and it's getting more and more people involved in it, it's the same exact thing. You have a whole bunch of people making content, but not a whole lot of buyers, right? Because there's not a whole lot of eyes on the content. There's not a whole lot of people who have actually gotten onto the platform. As soon as that platform really starts to take off and there's a whole flood of people getting in there, sure, a bunch of them are going to start making content, sure. But because of the number of eyes that are now flocking to that specific platform, there's going to be way more people wanting to buy your content. Just watch it, right? And because of that, your content now is worth more. What that means is you get more and more people watching, which means your influence and your personal brand in that specific account that is now getting propped up with all these this new influx of people. It's now getting, higher and higher, and you are now able to access a larger audience pool, which is a good thing, right? If you are in that position, it's a great thing. In the same way, though, that when it first started out and there wasn't a whole bunch of eyes and there was a bunch of people making content, it inevitably flips back over to that situation. That is arguably what I would say YouTube is right now. There's a whole bunch of people making content and there's still a fuck ton of people watching it. But the important differentiation there is that because there's so many people watching it, the amount of people watching and making, it's I would say relatively even, maybe. There might be a little bit more people watching, but it's not so disparaging where you can make a video and it by itself just being on the platform gets propped up. It needs to be able to fill a specific, niche. That's where it goes in. That's specifically for YouTube. And I feel as though that's something that will inevitably hit TikTok. I think right now it's in its kind of a paradigm, trying to understand exactly the situation that it's in. I think at this point, for you to pick up and start a TikTok right now with no influx of people from other social medias that you have to say, hey, I now have a TikTok, for you to get started out and starting just from scratch on that platform, you don't have the benefit of being able to get propped up by the seller's market. In a sense, you are trying to sell your house when everyone else is trying to sell their house, and there's still a bunch of people trying to buy, but it's relatively even. And so you don't really have any leverage either way, in which case your content is worth what it's worth. It's getting the views that it's getting versus other houses that may be more desirable, in which case you are now competing to create the best possible content. That might be for you. And that's what I mean, is like, it's very specific to the situation you're in and the type of content that you make. If your content really works for that platform and it is the house that people want to buy, it's the content people want to view, then you are very likely going to be successful on that platform. And everything that I'm talking about leveraging eyes versus people making content, that goes out the window. Because if you essentially provide the solution to the problem that the platform is staking, the platform wants people to be on longer. If you are solving that by keeping people on longer, then you're going to get shown to more people, right? You are now the solution for that platform. In the same way that I talked about, like with record labels and people before, if you bring the money, people will come to you. If you bring the attention of viewers, then TikTok or whatever platform is going to prop you up as much as possible, because obviously this content gets people to stay, which is our ultimate objective. So I hope that was clear in explaining that there are ways that you can leverage new platforms, and that TikTok no longer is in that specific place of leverage. And you are playing a game where it's completely even odds. And that's a game that some people can play because their content goes against and gives them that extra bit of boost. But especially like in my situation, that's not something that I want to build my content around. And that's not where I want to put the energy, because I feel that my content and the stuff that I want to make doesn't necessarily fit with the things that do well on TikTok. And so I just don't think that they're the best fit for it, which means TikTok isn't going to do anything for me. It is what it is. That's the gist of it generally. And then this kind of leads me to a very interesting thing that I've been mulling over just generally, like with marketing and with how I fill out my day whenever I'm not at work, like what things are the most important to me. And I think it really starts with the end, where it's like, what is the end goal of this that I'm doing? For instance, I'm making this podcast. What's the end goal of this? Well, whenever I make this podcast, there's a few different things I do with it. I have the audio version, which I send out to Spotify and Anchor, maybe somewhere else. I don't fucking know. But I have the actual audio recording, which serves its purpose as like a podcast. It's something that people can listen to if their lifestyle does not dictate the ability to watch it on video. That being said, I also record it on video. This content goes directly on to YouTube, which is an audience that I'm trying to build of people who are just trying to get into making music, music with guitar, marketing for musicians, general like concepts when it comes to like creating art and my style. I think this podcast adds to my world, the Purebred Mutts world, which is all about being able to create something that you enjoy and then getting it to people who not only enjoy what you make and find it valuable, but want to support you in a way that makes it so you no longer have to be bound by, restrictions of like not, especially monetarily, but you no longer having to feed into a system that doesn't really care about you. It just wants to use you. I want to be able to create this place for people to create what they want to make and then just get it to the people who want to listen to it, right? Because that's the most important thing. If you have the ability to control exactly what you make and then get it to the people who care about it the most, then you have ultimate control over yourself. And that's really what I wanted for myself. And that's what I want to be able to show you guys, that it's possible and something you can do. So my ultimate goal of this podcast is to have those separate areas. So the audio version of this for people who are in that specific situation and that they want the exact same thing. And then also the YouTube version. That gives me the opportunity to take all of these clips and cut them down into smaller videos that I can post every single day, which I have been doing. I've been posting a highlight from each podcast every single day. And then I believe Sunday I post the full-length podcast as a video form. So it now serves a double purpose. It has the audio form on Spotify and Anchor and wherever the hell else it goes. And then it also serves as content for YouTube. So I don't necessarily have to make separate content for YouTube. It's more of an extension of the content I'm already making, which means that this time right here is valuable because it serves a double purpose. And the reward I get from this not only is a community building one, which is a huge goal for me, is being able to, reach out to more people who are interested in this stuff. It also serves important for me because it helps me kind of actually talk out my thought process and how exactly I want to go forward with doing stuff. This tends to make it much more clear for me when I make decisions, whenever I actually talk it out. It helps a lot. And so this podcast does essentially those three different things for me. It's somewhat therapeutic, I would say. And so I enjoy doing it. It's something I love to do. And although it's not necessarily paying off monetarily, it's not something I care about. I just want to be able to do it and make it because I think there are people who actually care about it. And it sounds like that's something that you do, and you care about being here and learning in the same way that I enjoy making it. And so that's how I think about every platform, every piece of content that I make. Like, what's the end goal? And this isn't necessarily with the songs, because those are much more creative and it's more exploratory. The end goal isn't necessarily to like do anything. Like, I'm not trying to build my fan base with it. I'm not trying to do anything with the song itself. There are processes that I use to leverage a song in that way. But whenever I'm making a song, it's completely story driven. That's emotion driven. There's no weird, the weird context, no weird connotation to it. It's just something that I love to do. And then I have these other platforms to be able to explore that and leverage it and get it to people that actually want it and care about it, right? So that being aside, the actual like creative content I make is its own thing. But all of the choices that I make whenever it comes to the content that I put and where they go specifically in my ecosystem, that all is bent down to what is the end goal. And I want to talk about a couple of those real quick. So you can have a couple different end goals. And I hope that this kind of list and you being able to put them specifically in each one of these categories or one of these categories is really going to help you decide if this is something that you want to do, whether that's TikTok, Clubhouse, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, whatever, Snapchat, I don't know, MySpace. I don't really care. Whatever you want to do moving forward. If there's any new platforms, if there's any new, content types or things that you want to experiment with, it's important to be able to identify what's the end goal before you begin. So here's a couple of them that I came up with. What's the end goal? Make them for fun. Like I talked about, sometimes it doesn't need to be, and I would say most of the time it shouldn't be about making money or, getting new followers or subscribers or whatever. It should be just about doing something that you enjoy doing and then maybe capturing that in a way that you can share it if you want, right? If this is something that you want to do for a career, that's something I would highly recommend. But, mainly you should just do it because you love doing it. There shouldn't be any other reason. And I think, especially for me, I think about this all the time, is with each song, like, am I content of never being able to show this to anyone and still being happy doing it? Because if I sit back and say that I wouldn't do this unless I got to show it to someone else, then I know that's going to be a shitty song. And I know that there's something wrong with me and that I need to kind of readjust how I'm thinking, because that's not who I am. I don't make things for the sake of trying to get, money from them. I want to be able to make things because I enjoy it and they matter to me. And if no one else saw them, that's okay. I make them for myself. It's a lesson that I'm really glad I learned, and it took me a while to learn that. And I've talked about that before, but yes, that's a very valid, and I would say probably the most important reason you do anything is just for fun and because you want to. And that's it. Here's another one. What is the end goal? Trying to get big. This one is a questionable one for me, but it is a valid thing that I think a lot of people use to justify making something, right? If you're trying to get big, and so you make a piece of content to get big, or you use that content and leverage it on a platform to get big, I think that there's another aspect of that. Why are you trying to get big? What's the end goal of getting big? What does that do for you, right? And that kind of leads me to the next one, which is moving them over to another platform or monetizing them, or, those are the two main ones really. But they all go back to being able to support yourself as a brand. If you're trying to grow, the ultimate goal is to be able to just continue to do this in whether that's just supporting yourself or supporting a bigger community. I do think that that is a valid end goal, trying to get big. Now, I think trying is a little weird way to put it. And this one, it seems a little flip-floppy. I can understand that. I wrote it down because it just what popped in my head is like, this is the thing I get whenever I talk to people and they make content like this is going to blow up, right? Like this is going to be big. And I think what they're really saying is that this content is going to work really well on this specific platform. And it's going to do that by bringing in more fans and more people who are interested in me. And in that instance, I'll then be able to get them to a place where I then have the ability to get some sort of monetization, whether that's like selling them some cool merch, getting them involved in some fun like activities, whether that's like live streams or concerts or whatever, or just building out the ecosystem for later then being able to support your art and creativity in your music. So trying to get big, although it sounds like the super on the surface goal, I do think that it has value and it's important, but you should really be looking at what is the end goal of getting big. I hope that was clear. I felt like I kind of rambled on there, but yeah, essentially you're just trying to be able to prop yourself up and getting big, get it going viral. That's generally what it does. So what are the reasons that you do that? Really, it's especially for TikTok. Let's talk about that specifically right now. The good thing about TikTok is that comparatively to the other ones, it is much easier to get big. Comparatively to the other platforms, it is a lot easier to get big on TikTok than it is all the other ones. But the problem is that you don't have the ability to really, like, I don't want to say cash out, but like be able to get these people to support you. Like with Twitch, like people can actually subscribe and follow you and they can support you in that way. Patreon, it's the same thing. Even like Facebook and Instagram, like you have the ability to like send them to places that like they can buy your products or merch, or they can just support you in whatever way. TikTok is the same as those kind of, but it just doesn't really have a clear way in which you're able to take the audience and then really do something big with them. Now, here's the other thing. You can obviously advertise with your content. You know, for instance, if someone pays you to be you're now the advertiser for that specific business, then, you know, you can obviously get ad revenue from that in the same way that you could get that from YouTube. But it's not as solid, and I don't think it's as clear. And I think that there is a much bigger threshold for you to grow for that to become an actual viable thing. It's not impossible, and I think it's definitely worth exploring if the content you make is good for TikTok. Like I said, all my stuff generally gets thrown out the window if you make content that's good for TikTok. The reason that I'm not doing it is because mine's not. And so for me to put time and effort into making those, I wouldn't be able to, you know, get that goal and, you know, get big and be able to take these people to a place where they're able to actually support me. It's just a little more difficult, but it's not impossible. So that's definitely something that you should think about if TikTok is something you're thinking about and it's something that you want to try exploring. What kind of content do you love making, and will it fit on there? You know, it's just my thoughts. And then let's talk about generally, like, why is TikTok so big? And why is it big with like companies right now? Why is it seems like everyone and their mother have a TikTok, right? And I think it's honestly because of the audience that's on there. You know, that's where all the kids are. And I don't mean like children. I mean, I imagine they're on there too. But like, that's where all the younger people on there. In the same way that like back in the day, maybe, you know, 5 to 10 years ago, everyone was on Snapchat. And even before that, everyone was on Facebook. That's where the younger people are. And for some reason, people think that the younger generation is the best one to advertise to, which studies have shown it's not. It's at least comparable. I would say at most comparable. I mean, they don't really have the same kind of money. That being said, they have a lot more leverage nowadays with their ability to like use the internet and, you know, applications and phones and technology. It's a lot better for them, and they just have a better grasp of it versus everyone like in my generation and younger than that. Like, I'm only 25, so I'm not that old, but you know, we more like adopted it and then like filled in and grew into it versus people who are now getting into it. They grew up with it. This is all that they know. This is the reality that they understand. So like, those are the people that are on TikTok right now, and people find that they are the most valuable, right? Maybe, you know, maybe. It kind of just depends. Again, you know, it depends really if they are your audience, because if they are, then obviously, you know, maybe you should figure out a TikTok plan. If that's the audience you're going for, then in the same way that like you need to find where your audience is at, like you already know they're there. How do I find them? You know, the one problem with TikTok is that the only way you're really able to find the audience is by guessing. And I guess it's not really different than the other ones, but I think that like comparatively, it's a little more difficult. You're basically searching up hashtags. You're figuring out exactly like what's trending right now, and you're following it. And that might be a good strategy, but it's an extra added layer of work, and it might be worth it for you. If that's your audience, then I definitely think that it's something valuable and you should check it out. But for me, again, and it'll go back to me because that's the experience that I have. My audience isn't really on TikTok. And so it's not even really worth it for me. And maybe they will be at some point, but right now they're not. That's not where they hang out. And it's just not really worth it in my playbook to put that time and effort, you know, into making content for a place that doesn't really harbor the people that are interested in my content in the first place, right? But that is the reason why it's really popular, why people love it a lot. And I don't think that that's invalid. I think it has a lot of value for the right person. And that's something that I do think it's important that I clarify, that it actually does have value and it's something that you can leverage, but it's just a little bit more difficult to monetize, I suppose. And maybe I'm just not versed as well as I can be in it because it doesn't have the people that I'm looking for. But, you know, there are good things about TikTok, and I just generally wanted to talk about that. Let's compare all of them. Let's compare TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. Those are the ones that I am most familiar with, and we'll go from there. So we'll talk about the good and bad from all of them and see exactly like if TikTok is good for you. So let's talk about the staples right now. Let's talk about, first things first, YouTube. Is YouTube a good platform for you? Again, it depends. It depends on the type of content that you like to make. And I think essentially how all of these are going down, I think is a good way to describe it, is that there is essentially a few different parts of the equation when you're thinking about each individual platform. So one of them is the content that works well on each platform, the people that are on the platform, and then the algorithm of the platform, right? Because if you're, you know, making something but it goes against what the algorithm thinks is good, then it's not going to really be worth it for you. You're fighting an uphill battle. So let's talk about YouTube. What content works well on YouTube? This tends to fluctuate. You can check the trending pages to see generally what people are into, but I think it's pretty common knowledge. People are into videos that are within like 7 to maybe 20 minutes or so, like longer form videos, like short film type lengths, you know. People are really into that stuff. That's the stuff I really like a lot. And especially for, yeah, you know, like people who are actually making content for YouTube, not necessarily like music videos. We can talk about that a different episode. I'd love to talk about music videos specifically, but if you're making content for YouTube, the things that work are longer form videos. What does that mean? That means that you need to keep people's attention for longer. That is an art. That is something that I have definitely not figured out myself, but I do think is important whenever you're trying to analyze, is YouTube a good fit for me? Is this something that works? The reason that I put all my stuff on YouTube is it's a good hub for everything that I put out. It's a good platform for me. With these specifically, a lot of the videos that I make, the cuts and the highlights and everything from the podcast, they work really well with the timeline that YouTube tends to like. And the reason that YouTube likes that is because people are more likely to stay on YouTube longer if they click on videos less. There are lots of times where, especially at the end of the day, you're kind of just done. You're just tired. You're zoning out. You'll go on YouTube and you'll watch video after video, right? Short video, long video, whatever. It doesn't matter. But normally when you're going on a video or going on YouTube, you're looking for a solution to a problem, or you're trying to be entertained in some sort of way. When you go on there, you're really looking for one video that fits exactly what you're looking for. And especially if you're trying to like solve a problem, whether that's a how-to or, you know, just an understanding of like a concept or whatever video you want to watch. If it's in that kind of realm where you're trying to learn about something specifically, you need a specific video that works exactly for you. If that is a longer video and it takes you longer to be able to understand exactly what it is and how to perform it, or you know, how to understand it necessarily, then you're going to be on the platform for longer, right? Which means that that specific the video is going to keep you on YouTube longer, and is then going to feed into the algorithm and say, hey, people have been on this video for a while. It obviously is important. It's what people want. So let's put it out to more people and see what happens, right? That's how you'll see that these videos from like 10 years ago will pop up in your recommended, because all of a sudden it'll get sent out to a few people. The algorithm is like testing it again. It sees that it's getting a bunch of like long retention rate, and then it kicks out to more and more people. And again, I went from the content to the algorithm itself because they're very much intertwined. The algorithm wants something specifically from these videos. It just wants them to be keeping people engaged for longer. And that's really it. For YouTube, that sweet spot is that time frame I talked about, 7 to 20 minutes, maybe 25 you can get away with for sure. Anything longer, it's an uphill battle for sure. But, just to get people to stay that long. And I from what I understand, and I don't know everything about the YouTube algorithm, I'll be quite clear on that. But, from what I understand, I believe it counterbalances the percentage of video watched and also the viewing time, and determines whether something is more important or not, and whether it should get kicked out to more and more people. And then the last thing for the platform is what kind of people are on that. YouTube is really interesting because it, in my opinion, holds it's one of the biggest platforms on the planet, if I'm not mistaken. I don't have the actual numbers on hand or anything like that, but it is a massive platform. There's all kind of age ranges, languages, countries, all kinds of people. It's massive. And so the good part about that is it's common. And so if you, for instance, send someone a YouTube link, they see that and they're like, oh, okay, this is credible. It's just on YouTube. I'm not going to get any like viruses from this, right? Which is, something that we used to have to be concerned a lot more with, and still should be somewhat. But, it's a trustworthy source. Everyone knows about YouTube and they use it a lot themselves. And so when you send them something or you share it, it just seems more like a trustworthy place to check out, right? Vimeo's somewhat similar, but YouTube is, in my understanding, much bigger than Vimeo. Not that it's necessarily better, but I would say because of the massive amount of eyes, it is if you're having long form content, I would say that this is most likely the best place for that type of content specifically. And the cool part about it is that it's self-fulfilling. I mean, over and over again, it teaches you exactly what it wants, especially if you do like the creator studio and like the academy or whatever. Like it really wants to get your content out to people who are really interested in it. And so it will try to help you in any way that it can. And if YouTube is something you're really interested in, I would highly recommend subscribing and keeping track with me, seeing exactly what I do, because sometimes I might do something that will work, and that would be really cool to show you guys that. Unfortunately, I just don't really have that type of insight to say this is exactly how you reach to the people you're specifically looking at. Which is something else that we should talk about, is how do you take the content you're making and get it to the people who are actually interested in it? The way that you do that with YouTube is not with ads, in my opinion. I think ads for YouTube and Google are kind of stupid for musicians. They don't really make sense, and they're not as like intuitive, I would say, as like Facebook and Instagram ads. It's just hard. It's so much harder to be able to find the person who actually likes your stuff, because you're not able to target based off of what people actually like. Like I can't look for people who like the White Stripes. I can advertise people who like music, and that's it. So it's not really that helpful, to be honest with you. I can't, because how many people that like my stuff like music? I would say all the people who like my stuff like music, but definitely not all the people, not even a large percentage of the people who like music like my stuff. So I'm getting out to the people who don't necessarily care, which means I'm wasting my money, which means I'm wasting my time. Anyway, ads don't really work. So the best way to get to people who enjoy your stuff is either to bring them from other platforms that you already have a nice presence on for free, in that transaction, or with tags and keyword research, SEO, search engine optimization. And Google, YouTube and Google are the same thing, essentially. They are the biggest search engines in the world, and they feed into each other. They specifically thrive on keywords, right? So if YouTube is something you're into, that's how you need to attack it. You need to find the audience specifically with keyword research. I would highly recommend vidIQ. That's what I use. I think there's a whole bunch of other like keyword research tools, but that one for me is like $50 a month, and it's worth it. It's worth it for what I do, because I have a lot of content that I don't necessarily make for somebody, but I have a lot of good ideas from that, and you can make videos for the audience that you already make content for and get it out to them, and make other videos that they'd be interested, thus feeding the algorithm, thus the algorithm getting you in front of people who tend to like stuff that you make. Anyway, that's YouTube. That's about as encompassing as I can get it. Like I said, I am not an expert. This is just my understanding based off of the research that I've done. I hope that is helpful. So that's YouTube. Let's talk about Facebook and Instagram, and we'll split them up, but I want to talk about them together because they're owned by the same company. And if you do Facebook ads, you also do Instagram ads. I mean, you can separate them obviously, but they're the same company. Facebook owns Instagram. If you didn't know that, now you know. Let's talk about Facebook first and then go to Instagram. And I'll talk about my strategies for all of these platforms later, because I think that might be really beneficial for you if that's something you're interested in. But right now, I just want to talk about like, what's the point of all of these? So let's talk about Facebook first, right? Facebook, what kind of content works good on Facebook? First of all, videos. I would say similarly to YouTube, it likes longer form content, but not nearly as long. I would say anywhere from, a minute to about 7 minutes, maybe 10 minutes. It takes that smaller content because Facebook is really good at scrolling. It likes to keep as much content rolling as possible, and it's much easier to get caught scrolling on Facebook than it is on YouTube, because I feel like on YouTube everything feels kind of disconnected because it's waiting for you to tell it what it wants you to see, or what you want it to see, But Facebook keeps giving you things that it thinks you already that it knows that you've already engaged with. And so it keeps giving you that content, and it wants you to see more and more of stuff like that content, right? And so basically, that's generally what it wants. It wants videos between like a minute and 7 to 8 minutes, right? That's like the sweet spot, especially if it's like really engaging. And that's why the Dodo and, other things like that, BuzzFeed, they have a lot of really successful videos on Facebook, and I imagine they do on YouTube as well. I just know that on Facebook, they're really good at making engaging content by, in the same way that YouTube videos do it, they give you a little sneak peek at the beginning, and then they kind of keep you with it as well. And then, of course, the descriptions as well are really good for capturing what you're looking for and what you're interested in. They give you like this sense of like, oh, what's happening in this? And then it's like that sense of intrigue. Anyway, that's generally the content that it likes. It likes photos, but in the same way that YouTube wants you to be on its platform as long as possible, Facebook is exactly the same. It wants people to be on there, its eyes on there. And the reason being is because it wants the ability, as you scroll, as you continue to look through your feed, to periodically, and I would say more and more frequently, see advertisements from companies that are paying Facebook to get in front of your eyes. This is good for Facebook. If the content that you make gets people to stay longer, it will suggest videos to those people for free. So if for instance, you could make an advertisement for a specific video that you have on Facebook, right? And it does really well, and it gains traction. Once you stop advertising it, Facebook might see that as a valuable resource for Facebook. And so it will actually put out that content specifically for you on your behalf to people who might like it, people who tend to already interact with it, and people like them. That's how they keep people on their platform, which again, as we talked about, is their main goal. That's all they really want, is to get people to continually stay on Facebook. What people are on Facebook? I would say Facebook has the biggest audience based off of the research that I've done on their business platform and what I've generally been able to pick up. They're huge. I believe they're in every country, or at least almost every country. And, they have the majority of the people on Earth on Facebook. I believe they're banned in China, but they're massive, right? And the people that are on there that are most prolific or on there most frequently are, I would say, like millennials and up. probably up to 65 plus is where it gets a little iffy, but there are plenty of those people on there. Facebook is the social media platform for anybody because it's easy to pick up, it's easy to find your friends, and it's easy to kind of like begin to interact with Facebook, and then Facebook will be able to pick up exactly what you want, and then all of a sudden you're on there forever, right? It's for a whole bunch of different people, and I would say it's just not as strong with the younger generation. I don't think it really has the interest for those people. I don't necessarily know if that's like an attention span thing. I don't think it is. I think it's more of just like the platform has that connotation of like, that's what all of my parents use, right? So I don't want to be on that. I want to be on this. And I understand that. I can get that. That was the reason I actually had a Facebook, is because my parents weren't on it. And I knew that's something I could get on. Same thing with like MySpace. Like, I got those not to have one, but to like be able to interact with my friends without having like, the overseer, quote unquote, which is funny now considering how much data all of those platforms have on us now. But those are the kind of people that are on there. That's the content that works when they're with their, with those people that are on. What does the algorithm do necessarily? The algorithm does exactly the same thing as YouTube, and that's generally what all of these platforms do, is they try to get you to stay on their platform as long as possible. So what that means is the content you make needs to be able to keep those eyes on Facebook for as long as possible. That being said, the thing that I like about Facebook the most is the ability to reach new people. Where YouTube really lacks in reaching people who are actually interested in what you make, Facebook is really good at. And the reason they're really good at, this is going to be surprising to you, well, maybe not surprising, but shocking, is they have a lot of information. They know what you like. They know what you're interested in, because that's the stuff that keeps you on their platform, right? They're using your psychology to benefit their platform, essentially, right? They're taking your habits and then being able to express them by giving you more content that you're interested, whether that's suggested or whether that's ads, right? So, there's definitely a bad connotation in that. I don't want to be misheard here. I think there are ways that it could be done better, for sure. I've always been like a big believer in having like your own like say in what information really gets spread. The thing that is so like sneaky about Facebook is that they're just good at guessing. Like educated guesses. And then they reaffirm that by saying, oh, they do like that. Like, for instance, let's say that you watch a large portion of like a Tony Hawk video, right? And then they start like sending you feelers. Like, you don't like anything with it. You don't follow Tony Hawk's page. All you got to do is like watch a good amount of it. And then you start scrolling and you're like, cool, that was dope, Tony Hawk. It's going to put out feelers in these suggested videos, and you're not going to notice anything, because at the top of that post it'll say suggested video, and you're not going to notice it. You're going to blow by because it's just another post, right? And it'll have something to do with skateboarding, right? And or snowboarding, who knows? It'll send you all these feelers, and what's the video that you're going to watch more of next, and it continues to build out this information, and all of a sudden it has like a pool of information of guesses about what type of stuff you're into, what kind of person you are. This is very bad if you are one of the people who just does not want to have that kind of information out. The problem is that there is a moral and ethical and legal debate about whether you actually own that information or not. I am under the belief that you do own that information. That's not necessarily what this podcast is about. But I do believe personally that these platforms should not have the ability to take that information without your consent. That being said, that is what is happening right now. As a musician, and as anybody who has a brand or an idea or something that they would like to broadcast to people, I definitely think that in the right hands, this is a great and amazing tool to get to people who are really interested in your stuff. In the wrong hands, this is a horrible and devastating thing, which is why I am very conflicted every time, I do research about stuff like on Facebook, and I think about it more and more. But for me, it's more of like, I just want to be like, I make this music, I make this stuff, and I want it to go to people who are going to appreciate it and actually care about it. I can't really do that on YouTube, you know? I can't really do that on TikTok. And I can't do that, you know, door to door. Facebook is the best place to do that. It has the tools to be able to send it to people who are actually interested. And that's how I met most of you guys, which is going to sound crazy. I don't want it to, like, I'm not like looking for, you know, your birthday or whatever. Like, I don't care about any of that stuff. I don't care about where you live. It's not about that. I just want to be able to get it to people who I think might enjoy it. So a lot of the advertisements I make are to people who like, you know, who are interested in the White Stripes, or, you know, Raconteurs, all Jack White stuff. People are interested in Rage Against the Machine, or even Post Malone, you know, whatever. Audioslave. Like, I like to go with other artists and creators who are like me, who make stuff like me, because more than likely you are also going to like them and me, you know? And if you don't, then you don't. But so I want to be clear with you. I don't want to use it maliciously. And I try to make every possible thing that I make as wholeheartedly honest as possible, because there is definitely a way that this can be abused, and I see that. And the first time that I even learned about marketing, I was like, this is not a good thing for people. This is a bad thing. This takes advantage of people. But I honestly see that this has the potential for horrible things, but it also has the potential for good things. And that's what I want to use it for. I just want to use it for the best possible reason, which is to share what I make with people who I think might be interested in it. And, you know, I put my money into that. I have ads. I've met a lot of you guys through ads, to be honest, just like full, you know, out in the open. I don't want to lie to you guys. I want to be completely honest. There's a reason you guys saw my videos. It's because I think that you might enjoy it, and not you like specifically, but I think that there's this big ecosystem of people who are more than likely going to like my stuff, or at least be interested enough to check out more of my stuff. And that's what I send that advertisement to. That's what I do. So anyway, Facebook is the best platform for that. Second is Instagram. And I do separate them in this aspect, because it is much easier to be able to interact with people and find people who are really interested on Facebook versus Instagram. And the reason being is because Instagram is really difficult to get like people off of. Like, it's really hard to get someone to like follow a link. For instance, if I'm trying to get someone to go to the Bombs and Bird Songs, you know, early EP launch experience, I'm calling the Detonator, I have to keep that link in my bio. Speaking of which, quick transition, April 14th, I am releasing my first EP, Bombs and Bird Songs. I am excited about it. You've already heard 2 of the songs, Hide and Seek and I Brought Enough. There are going to be 3 more with it. And in fact, here's a little announcement. I even bought CDs for them. I'm super excited about it. I'm just pumped. I put a lot of effort and work into that. And I actually created an entire world specifically around this, and it all culminates with my actual story, the story of my basically childhood, growing up to the point where I started playing guitar, which, as you guys know, is the most defining feature of myself. I play guitar, that's who I am. And there's a lot of time in between where, you know, me being born, being child raised, and then playing guitar. And so these 5 songs that I put in this EP all have a specific part in that story. Not only do they have that culminating story as the narrative arc of the EP, each individual song has its own fictional story that I wrote. I wrote a short story for each song. And yeah, I'm really excited about it. I love for you guys to check it out. I'll put it in the show notes. I'll put it in the description below. Yeah, I'm really pumped about it. I think it's awesome. If you are really interested, you can actually check out the early sign up page for it at, one second, let me pop it up here. So if you go to purebredmutts.com/bombs and bird songs, there's a dash between every single word. So bombs-and-bird-songs, purebredmutts.com/bombs and bird songs. And there you can actually check it out and sign up for the Detonator experience. That is the backstage early access EP experience that I'm putting on a week before the actual launch on April 14th. There is going to be, you know, secret links to the pages, and each day up to the actual release is going to feature a specific song from that launch experience. I'm really excited for it. I am really excited about it. I hope you guys join me on that experience. I'll also be doing a live stream every single day talking about that specific song, playing some guitar for you guys, and just hang out, answering any questions you guys have, and then getting your stories as well and your reactions from the song. So if that's something you want to do, it's completely free. Head on over to pureredmutts.com/bombs and birdsongs - in between each word. And, I love to see you guys there. So anyway, I'm going to get back to it. Like I said, with links, let's move back to Instagram here. Instagram is great for audiences of younger people. I would say it has that TikTok audience and then a little bit older. It's really broad, and for me, it's actually one of my favorite platforms. I post on it most frequently. I post 2 videos a week and then 1 on the weekends, and I like it a lot. I think it's actually, for the advertisements that I do, I think it's where I meet the most people and I get the most people interested in my stuff and the most community out of. I personally believe it's also the best way for like me to message people and talk to people one-on-one. I really like it a lot personally. It's a good place for people who are looking for that audience that it's kind of like younger to like mid 20s, late 20s adults. It's a good place. And in the same way that like Facebook and YouTube just want people to stay on their platforms longer, Instagram is no different. But the difference is it is not as set up for video as the other two. It is much more image based, obviously, and it has been for some time, but is also a great place for video, for shorter video. Of course, it has its Instagram TV function, and it's even got its Reels, which is like the TikTok competitor, but I don't care about it in the same way that it doesn't interest me on TikTok, doesn't interest me on Instagram. So, in that aspect, I would say the content, based off of the research I've done, the content on Instagram that does well are the pictures, like good pictures, well made, and things that have like an ethereal feeling, or like just an emotional feeling to them. If you have something that really catches people's eyes and gets them to look at it at Instagram longer, it's obviously a win. And then also, if you have shorter video clips, I think it's great. I put a lot of me actually playing guitar on Instagram, where on YouTube, I only have a couple videos of that because, me playing guitar lasts 4 or 5 minutes max, mostly like 2 to 5 minutes. And I can post little clips of that on Instagram and have those as actual posts, which is what I do. The stories feature is awesome. I get to talk about exactly what I'm doing that day, and it works really well for my content specifically. It also has the audience that I'm really looking for me, which is like, people who play guitar, who like rock music, stuff like that. It has those people, and it has the content that I like to make. So for me, it's a win. It's exactly where I should be. It fills the need that I think TikTok would have, but it does it in a better way. And it also has the ability for me to advertise in the same way that I do to Facebook, where it gives me that very detailed capability that YouTube can't, but also, helps me capture the people who are really interested in my stuff. So Instagram is really big for me. The only downfall I have with Instagram, and like I said, is it's hard to get people off of Instagram. It's not impossible, but it's a lot harder. And I think the best way to advertise on Instagram is really like the swipe feature. I think is pretty dope. The feed ads don't really work for me. They tend to look just super like ads, and I just don't like that. It just feels weird. But anyway, it's a good place. The algorithm does exactly like the others, and it's good if that's the audience that you're looking for. Basically like the TikTok audience, but maybe a little bit older and a little bit younger than the Facebook audience. So I'd say probably between maybe 16 and like 40s, like a really solid zone for it. Whereas Facebook's more like 25 to like 65. YouTube's more broad, but less specific, obviously. Whereas TikTok, we'll get into that now, has a very, I guess, narrow density in which it has a whole bunch of people and a whole bunch of its audience. And so TikTok is really good if the content you make is something that would work really well on Vine. Like they have a specific audience and things that work for them. TikTok is very much built on the trending feature. It's hard to get like straight up discovered. Like you have to follow these specific trends, I believe, in this stage of TikTok to really be able to get big from there. That being said, in the same way that it's hard to get people away from TikTok, or away from Instagram, it's the same thing on TikTok. Like it's not super easy, and their advertising platform is shit. Like it's not good. It is really bad. It's the same thing as Spotify. Like it just sucks. There's nothing good about it. It's hard to target people. It's hard to figure out like if you're actually spending money on things that matter, or like what you're actually trying to get. And it normally just doesn't work that well, and people can sniff out ads really fast on it, and it takes them out of the experience. And at that point, they don't even care what the ad's about. They just don't want to watch it. So it like defeats your purpose, and it puts this label on you as like big business. And it's a weird spot to be. Like you could have the most wholesome content, but as soon as it has like that ad vibe, no one cares about it. And TikTok differentiates them so much that it's difficult to be able to get out of that. So even if people would care about what you make, it completely takes you out of the conversation. They're not even going to consider it. So in that aspect, I just think it sucks. It's not good for finding specific people who are interested in your stuff. Like, I don't think it's impossible. And I think it's probably actually easier than YouTube. But I think, again, and this is really for me, the content that I make, if I was really trying to blow up on that, I would have to completely customize it for TikTok, which is a whole set of time and effort and creativity that I don't want to put on that for the reward of getting a bunch of followers that I then do not have the true ability to be able to grow into the community that I want. It's hard to get them onto the different platforms. And I think that's really a sign of strength of your brand, is being able to have a big community on a few different platforms, not all of them, but like a couple. Like you aren't specifically tied down to one platform, because what that gives you is the ability to then continue to grow on other ones. Because the people who are really big on Vine, who didn't go to other platforms at all, when Vine died, like they were done. They didn't have the ability to take that audience and move them to somewhere else. Like they were just gone. Some people did really good, like Drew Gooden, and a few other people I can't think of right now. He's the one I watched specifically, so he was in my mind. Danny Gonzalez as well. Like those people did a great job of moving over to YouTube, and their content translated really fucking well, especially because they kind of they turned it for YouTube specifically. But in the same way, like I'm saying, like I don't think that TikTok is gonna just be gone. I just think that it's possible, just like any other platform is. I mean, if all of your eggs are in that basket, someone can just take the basket, and that's it. So I think it's really a good and important sign of your growth as a brand and as a musician, as an artist, or whatever you do, to have a strong strength on multiple platforms. If that's something you want to do, I should actually preface all of this stuff. You might not even want to do any of this. You might just be making music for fun, and you're listening to this just because, I don't know, maybe you want to support me, or you just want to like see if this is something you're interested in. Maybe this isn't the best thing for you. And it's something I probably should put on every single one of these podcasts and videos, is that you don't have to do any of this stuff. You don't have to make music for the platform. You don't have to make content for the platforms. You don't have to advertise. You don't have to do anything. You can do whatever you want, honestly, and you don't have to care. If you're doing it for yourself and something you love to do, then who cares? You don't need to get it to people who might be interested in it. You don't need to. You can just do whatever you want and be happy with yourself. You deserve that. You should be able to make what you want and be happy, and that's it. No holes, no bars. And if that's something that you want to do, and that's not something that is important to you, then do it. That's awesome. More power to you. I just want you to be happy. I'm saying this because, and I'm making this podcast and all this stuff because I honestly think that the information that I give could possibly be useful to somebody, and it could be beneficial to hear this from someone else. I guess me in this situation. And that hopefully by me making this video, making these podcasts and everything, my hope is that you can take this information and be able to use it to your own advantage and be able to grow the art that you make or whatever it is that you make. I think this is applicable for anybody. If there's something you care about doing and it's something that you actually want to be doing and not just something for like a hobby, that's really what this information is for. But if you just want to do something for fun and you don't want to like monetize it or turn it into a career, then just do it for fun. And if people like it, then they like it. That's it. You don't have to have like a social media strategy. You can just have a good time doing it. And that's totally cool. Speaking of social media strategy, this entire thing, I think I should I have way more notes actually. I make like a page of notes and then I just ramble on about stuff. But I'll be quick on this because we're already over an hour. But this is pretty cool content and I think it's worth talking about. So I'll go through real quick. Can you have all of them? That is a question for you. And let me talk about how you should come to that conclusion. Can you have all of them? Yeah, sure. You can. I think spreading yourself that thin isn't a good idea. But some people have the capability. Like some people just don't have school, they don't have a job, and they don't need any of those things. And they have the ability to just be able to make whatever they can and put the time necessary to grow and actually, build their community on every single one of these platforms. And like they just have the time to do that. And they have the content for each platform that really works. For those people, of course, do all of them. Why not? In the same way that you shouldn't have your eggs in one basket, have all of the baskets. They might take some baskets, sure, but they only have two hands, in which case you have hella more baskets, so you're good to go. If you can, it's a good idea because there is this concept of being what is it, not godlike, but having like a worldly presence wherever someone is able to like go into your ecosystem and like any platform they're on, like you have a voice in. And so you are the voice that they hear on all these different platforms. That's a good thing. If someone really likes you and that's something they're interested in, that's a great thing to have, is that ability to just, be able to say, hey, I'm doing this over here, or just, show up randomly. And all of a sudden, if you have something new and interesting, then you can show it to all of your different platforms and be able to boost up that thing. And you just have that much more power over just the whims of that specific platform's algorithm, right? It's a good thing if you have the ability to leverage. That's why bigger creators and brands do that, is because having the eyes of all these different platforms, normally they're not all the same people. You do have a lot of people who overlap, but there's some people who don't have a Facebook, but they have an Instagram, or they don't watch YouTube, but they're on TikTok, right? It kind of gives you the ability to say, hey, like I'm over here too. You should check it out. Or I'm doing this thing over here. You should do it. And I should also preface, I didn't talk about Twitch and I didn't talk about live streaming. That's something that might work for you. I don't have enough information on that, so I'm not going to talk about it. Maybe another time as I do more and more research. But for someone who does strict live streaming, it's a different animal. And I actually think it requires a bigger dive into, which I'd love to talk about. I'd love to give, myself a reason to explore it, but I knew it's not something I was into. So that's why I didn't really talk about it. Anyway, it's not a bad idea to have all this stuff. What I would personally suggest is that you don't, especially starting out by yourself. I do not think you should have every single platform. I think it's reasonable to have 3, but beyond that, I think it's too much. Unless you're able to recycle content for each one without it being like bland and super boring, Like in this one, like I have the audio version of the podcast and I have the video version of the podcast. I think they fit 2 different versions of the content, and they are different enough where it has value in itself. And so it's okay for me to necessarily recycle it. So that's why I technically have 4, because there's the Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and then I guess this as well. Those are the ones that I chose specifically because they work really good for my content. I would suggest, I mean, you pick 3 max. That's really good. I think it's probably even smarter, especially starting out, to pick 1 and go hard on just one piece of content, just one platform, and get it like down to a science for you and what works really well for your content and what you like to make. That way, all of your energy and everything's going into one. So that way you're not like spread too thin and don't get burned out as quickly. That's what I'd personally suggest doing. Going over 3 is really difficult. And even when I'm doing, like, I'm hitting the edge of what I personally have the ability to do by myself. And there are definitely going to be moments where I'm going to need to take a break, honestly, like, maybe like a week or so here and there. Just at the pace that I'm going, I can tell that's going to be a thing. But, it really depends on who you are as a person. If you have a bunch of people who are going to help you, you can do more than 3, sure. But managing all of those is really difficult by yourself. So I would suggest doing 3 max, but really focusing on 1 as your big one. And let's talk about strategies real quick for people. I don't know your situation is specifically, but this is for people who want to make music their full-time career, and this is something that they love to do. Let's talk about strategies. Let's start out with people who are new musicians who want to, maybe you started picking up guitar or you started doing something. At that point, I would classify you as not an expert. And basically what that means is like, you aren't the person that people come to learn about information. You haven't done anything. You are learning yourself. That has value to people, right? People want to see growth and they want to see how you continue to maintain. And then like years from now, they love the opportunity to be able to see what you came from. Like I remember I was watching Mr. Beast one time, and he had this video that he posted like 5 years ago, but it was like scheduled for 5 years from that day. And then I went back and checked out all of his old videos, and they look completely different. And it was like interesting to me. And I was like really fascinated. I watched a lot of his early videos to see like where he came from and how he got to that point. When you're starting out, it may not seem like that matters, but if this is something that you love to do and like you're really interested in doing it, then feel free to film it or record it in whatever way works well for you. And like all of a sudden you become like the historian of yourself. And I think that there's going to be a lot of people like that in the future. But the people who are really going to stand out are those that continue to do it and have that like content from years and years, throughout their creative career. I think that has value. As a new musician, your goal should not be to find an audience who is interested in your stuff. Your goal should be to make stuff, make whatever content it is you're interested in. If you're learning how to play an instrument, just film your progress slowly. Every day, just film something that's like minute, and do not worry about whether the content you're making is good for the platform that it is on. Don't worry about that. You do not care about trying to get followers. Don't care about that. Just try to grow as the performer, and whatever art it is that you're trying to create, grow to the expert. Get to that point, because then things will change. But until you actually have that skill that people are seeking out and want to see more of, you're not going to be able to really latch on to people, and people aren't going to see you as like this authority in whatever you're doing. They're just going to see you as like another person who's doing stuff in the way, like if you were to like record your progress of playing guitar and learning how to play guitar, and then you were to, for instance, like do ads on that and like send it to people, they're going to be like, okay, so you're learning how to play guitar. That's it. Like they're not going to be as excited about it, versus 10 years from now, someone's super pumped about what you're making and they check out that stuff. They're like, wow, this guy started from here. Like I can do that. I can start from there and get to, it's like more inspiring rather than someone being like, and so like you're playing guitar. And so whenever I started playing guitar, people got fucking annoyed by me because I would keep playing, like Wanted Dead or Alive on my amp, and people would be annoyed as shit because I'd play it like 503 times. And on the 504th, they come down and like rip out the cord from the wall to just shut me up because they were tired of it. People didn't want to listen to it. you're going to get a lot of that whenever you're starting out. And this is just advice for anyone. People are going to talk shit. They're not going to like what you make, and they're going to think it's really bad. If you're a new musician, that's something you shouldn't even care about. You should definitely appreciate when people are excited about it and see themselves, the progress that you've made, but it's not something that you should search for, and you should not be looking for followers in that specific scenario. Just make what you're making and have fun, and do it just because you love to do it, because that will translate into the content you make years from now, into the platforms that are there years from now. You know, that's really what it's for. And that's why it's important to just make stuff and to mess up. That's it. And to document it if you want, you know, but just get a craft and get something that you love to do and do it, and not expect anything from it. That's the advice that I would give you. I hope that is helpful. Now let's talk about strategies for people who are in my shoes. And again, we'll talk about my strategy. What is something for like intermediate musicians, people who are like pretty good at what they do, good enough to make content that they're proud of and actually want to get out to people, and, you know, they're like looking for feedback necessarily, or want to make it more of a career. People at the precipice of themselves, where in the art that they make, where they just want to actually get to the point where they can send it out to people and people have the ability to support them and want to support them. What's the strategy for you? I would pick 1 to 3 of these platforms. Make content that you love making, not content that is a burden to you. Make content that you love to make and put it on the platform that is specifically designed, or that the algorithm likes the most for that platform. So if you make songs and like you just record yourself playing live, YouTube and Facebook are great for you. Put some clips of it on Instagram, you know? If you're someone who like actually draws and stuff, make some time-lapse videos. Put that stuff on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. TikTok's a great place for people who like actually draw and all that stuff, because you can like narrate over it with text, and that's engaging and fun, you know? It kind of depends on the art that you make and the content that you love to make, you know? Find whatever content that you actually like to make. And how about this? Just make a piece of content. Don't make it for any platform. Just make it and then put it to whatever platform works best for that content. So that way the content isn't necessarily for something, but it does become enhanced by the platform that it's put on. That's what I tend to do. Especially when I was starting out, I was trying to just make stuff for fun, and I was like, where should I put that? And then it filled into the slot that I think best described where it was supposed to go. And then what you should do after the content is put it out and you are engaging with the platform enough to where the algorithm sees you as someone who is going to be good in the future, you know, like the content you make, especially like with Spotify, for instance. We'll just use them as an example, but I got shit to talk about Spotify. For Spotify, for instance, they want artists who are going to be releasing more and more. Like they want people to release frequently. And they want that because that ensures that they are getting more and more content, because they think that people want that. They think that people want newer and newer content. And that's why they're talking about people like, you know, instead of spending a few years to make an album, they're talking about people like dropping a song like every month or an album every quarter, which is fucking crazy. But, you know, that's what they want generally, right? So their algorithm is going to enhance to people who they think or who have been consistently uploading something, and then they're going to push that out to more people, right? The content that you make really, like I said, depends on it's in itself. Like what platform does it work for? And then if that's the content you like to make consistently put it on that platform and keep making that stuff and grow organically in that way. So that way you are helping yourself rather than hindering yourself, right? So you've got the content, you made it, you love making it, you want to make it just because you want to, and it really works with the art that you like to make. You have it on the platform that it works best for. What do you do now? Well, now you got to get it to the people who like it the most. If you make content and it's really good on YouTube, what I would personally suggest doing, if you have the ability to, I think the most effective way to get to people with the least amount of work is through advertisements on Facebook and Instagram. use those advertisements and send them to YouTube, right? If that's the best place for you, YouTube. If Facebook is better for that content, then just keep them on Facebook and just get them coming to your pages wherever. Facebook and Instagram is the best advertisement, in my opinion. Google and YouTube is fine. Like it'll work, but it's more expensive and it's a lot more difficult, I would actually say, personally. You know, and then of course, beyond that, beyond the advertisement route, if you don't have that ability, you don't have the monetary ability to actually make those advertisements and reach people in that way, in that specific way, the next thing is like organic grinding. And this is by like seeking out groups and seeking out other like pages and channels and anywhere that has people who are also interested in the stuff that you make. The way you can do that is, for instance, if you have a song, if you are like an artist or whatever, what if someone saw your song or they saw your art and then they saw someone else who made stuff similar to it, not an exact copy, but like what people would like this and then also like this. So you have to kind of determine like what other things is my stuff like, you know? That's why whenever, for instance, you make a cover song, you should find fans of that original artist, because if the people don't know who the original artist was, they don't know that song, the cover song is not enticing to them. But if they love Journey's Don't Stop Believing and you do a cover of Don't Stop Believing, you should find people who like Journey, not people who like Metallica. You know? Does that make sense? So, you know, what would you do? You go to fan groups of people who like Journey. You go to Journey's page and you find people who are on there. You comment on their posts. You comment on channels that talk about Journey and everything like that. And you don't necessarily say, hey, like, here's my stuff, check it out. Actually talk to people and see exactly what they want and say, hey, you know, like I did this. Check it out if you want. You know, don't be like pushy about it. People don't like pushy stuff, and people don't like to just look at links. They don't just follow them. They need like a reason to do that. Advertisements are good in that sense because like they have a call to action, you know, and it's not like a weird thing. It's like kind of an understood, like this is an ad and I don't have to be a part of it at all. But if it's a normal like conversation or like a comment that you're actually linking your link to your video or whatever content you make, it becomes a little weird whenever like it's going up to someone and saying, hey, you know, like I do this. I've never met you before. I do this. Check it out. Rather than saying, hey, this is me. This is stuff I like. Do you like this stuff? You know? And if they say yes, it'll be like, that's dope. You know, I like this stuff. This is why I like it. These are my experiences from it. This is who kind of makes me me. This is what makes me me. And, you know, if you like that stuff, maybe you'll also enjoy this that I made. You know, it's a little more less, it's not informal. It's more comfortable. It's more warm. Like all the interactions you make should not be like immediately check out my stuff unless you're like having an advertisement. I think that's more reasonable. But if you're doing stuff organically, do not go with the approach of like, check out my stuff, follow for follow. That shit does not work. And it makes the algorithms pissed because you're abusing it, right? Which is hilarious. But like you're taking advantage of the algorithm. And so it does not want to reward you for that behavior. So follow for follows do not work. That stuff is bullshit. Maybe I'll talk about that more in a different video. But so the general idea for a plan as like an intermediate musician is as follows. Make the content that you were going to make anyway. Put that content on the appropriate platform. And if you make this stuff consistently, which I would highly recommend, unless it's something that is like a burden, you don't like doing it, obviously you want to continue like doing it, to like actually doing it. If you continue to make that stuff and put it on the platforms, you need to get that content to people who then like that type of stuff, like things that are similar to that stuff that you make. And then you can reach that either through advertisements or organic means. And that is it, guys. Wow. This is a lot. This is the longest podcast I've had so far. I'm a little tired, I gotta be honest with you, and I didn't even get to like close of things that I thought about. And maybe I'll talk about that at a different episode, but I actually have something special planned for the next one. The next episode of the Mutts Cast is going to be specifically talking about the Bombs and Birdsongs EP and everything about it and everything that I'm excited about. And and just everything. Man, it's all been culminating to this point. It's a massive step into this project and what I love to do, which is make music. And I'm really excited about that. If you guys have any questions, feel free to find me on Instagram, purebred_mutts. DM me, hit me up. I really would love to talk about it. I will have a link in the show notes as well, if that's something you're interested in. Of course, you can find me on all the other platforms, but the best way is to, I got a link down there. You can see all the stuff. It's basically like a toned in link. It shows you all the things. It has this podcast here, has my website. It has YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. That is where I'm most active. Again, I appreciate you guys being here. This is fantastic. I love doing this. And like I said, even if no one listens to this, I just like doing it. I love talking about it because it helps me refocus myself. For a while there, I was like, man, I should get a TikTok. But it's like, why? And once you actually really start thinking about why you should or shouldn't do something, everything becomes a lot more clear, and it makes the things that you do that feel that much more important. And that's why I love doing this. That's why I love being here. That's why I love making music. It's something that I think really makes me who I am as a person, and it's why even if no one listened to it, I would continue to do it. And to be fair, no one's been listening for a while, so I think it's a fair summation of who I am as a person, making music with no one listening and making content with no one being here. And if people come here, then I would love it. You were here, obviously, and I love you so much for being here. It's amazing to do this. I am absolutely blessed that I have the ability to even do this. And I'm not even a religious person. I'm just grateful. I'm just grateful for being here. And I'm grateful for having you guys here. And anyway, that is it for me, guys. I will catch you later. Have a